The Gartland Group presents Taxes, the IRS, and You with your host, Bernie Gartland. Taxes, the IRS, and You is a different kind of show that'll help you solve your tax problems. As former Deputy Attorney General of the state of Delaware and with over 25 years of experience as sole practitioner in both Delaware and California, the name Bernie Gartland has become synonymous with taxes. And now your host, Bernie Gartland.
Hi everybody, Bernie Gartland. Name of the program is Taxes, the IRS, and You. We're here every single Wednesday, and we consider ourselves a kind of different kind of show, kind of electric kind of show. And we normally talk about a lot of tax problem solving, a lot of tax consequences, and tax strategy. And so we're going to have a little bit of a very interesting conversation today. In-house today. I guess that's the expression you do. Is in-house today is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Mr. 59 Geiberger. Welcome, Al.
Nice to be here, Bernie. It's great to be on your show. I've seen you a few times, usually when I'm working out at the gym.
Yeah. And
they have the TVs up front on Wednesdays. I look up, there you are.
There we are, yeah. And you know, well, we've been knowing each other for several years now. When I did my radio show, which I did for like 10 years or so, I had this big thought that I said, you know, we're doing all this tax work, that tax work, and I was looking for a new concept, and I was watching Golf Channel. Remember, you don't say the Golf Channel anymore, you say Golf Channel.
Yeah, you're right.
And when it was on CBS and NBC, and all of a sudden, it just hit me like a ton of bricks on how silly it was that you'd see all the people who won the tournaments. They'd present this cardboard a check for $100 million, and it'd be 4 foot by 8 foot. And I say to myself, what do? Do they put that under their arm and they go down to the bank and they say, will you deposit it? I mean, and all of a sudden I started thinking, I said, well, wait a minute. What do they do? How do they get paid? And what are the tax consequences? And the other thing that came up in my mind is, what about the caddies? How do they get paid? And all of a sudden it dawned on me, there isn't anybody I'd rather talk to except Mr. 59, Al Geiberger, to tell me what is the history, because you date back some years, a few years.
Yeah, a lot,
okay?
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I just finished a book that you had on your desk when we talked last, The Big Three and Me, which was Billy Casper, and you know Billy Casper.
He even had me in there a couple spots in the
book. He did, your picture in there also. Yeah, I read that. But yeah, I said, Al, tell me about that. And then there's other things that we got into, because you gave on the radio show some marvelous stories about the caddies piling into a car. And Billy Casper touched on in his book is that you were not allowed to have certain caddies week after week. But first, let's go.
That was a rule at one time.
Yeah, it was.
Now we're going. Now we're dating ourselves. When I started on the tour in 1960, for 5 or 6 years in there, you couldn't have the same caddy for more than 2 weeks, which was kind of a dumb rule, but that's the way it was. And then they finally, as caddies started coming out there and being regulars, we used to take whatever caddies were there at the club or in that town, and then more and more caddies started kind of coming along with the tour, and so problems came up to pretty well you could take anybody you want anytime. And the Masters, remember the Masters, they used to you had to use their caddies, and they had their number one caddy to their worst caddy. And I always got a high number. You couldn't take your own there. Well, finally, Arnold and Jack and those guys had a little more pull. They finally started complaining. They want to bring their caddy to the Masters. So finally, they broke that rule there, and because you were open to whatever caddy, and some of them, by the time you get to 40 or 50 pick, you don't get a very good caddy. So a lot of those rules have all changed.
Well, let me ask you about that, for instance, now, and that presents a situation is that, so let's say there's 20 people in a tournament. I know there's more than that, but let's just say 20. Out of the 20, somebody's going to win. There's going to be a second, third, fourth, and 20. So the person who's in the 20th position in this hypothetical doesn't earn as much money as the person in number 1 position, but he's got to pay his caddy. So back then in the 60s and 70s, how did the caddies get paid?
Well, I think they're pretty well somewhat the same now. I mean, I think some of them are paid, they're like hired, you know, like, I would think like Tiger and Bill Mickelson and all those. I'm not so sure they're not on a certain contract. I don't know, I'm guessing. Right. And maybe get a percentage for wins, bonuses, and stuff like that. We were more used to a certain amount per week for the caddy. In other words, it used to be 100 a week, and about the time I finished playing, it was like the caddy got 600 a week, and then he got 6% or something like that. And that was kind of a rule. You could give or take.
Is that back in the 60s and 70s?
Yeah. No, that would be back more in the 80s and 90s. Yeah, I was paying 4, 5, 6 guarantee for the week for the caddy. So you had to guarantee your caddy something.
Win,
so
lose,
whatever
or draw,
the
right?
living standard was at that time, and it gradually moved up.
Right.
And then a percentage. And I'll bet most of them are still that way, except, like I say, the ones that are making so much money. And those caddies now aren't just caddies. You see how much work they do when they're on TV? Well, they're doing a lot off. They may travel with the player. They may be running around doing all kinds of things for him, traveling on his plane.
Well, let's take those caddies. Let's say in the 90s and 2000s now. Do the players pay them out of their own personal checking account for their services rendered?
Yeah, one way or another. I guess you'd probably know more than that, but I always wrote a check out of my own account too. Right.
And so did you, I want to ask if you did, but did a lot of the players issue them 1099s at the end of the year so that the IRS had a system that the caddies were reporting their taxes?
You're skating into a shaky area there. What happened? The caddies barely get by out there. It used to be. Right. Some of them now are making a lot of money. And so did we ever give them a 1099? No. Not very many. But some of those, when the player got checked, audited, and all of a sudden the player had to come out and start giving out 1099s, and it was a big pain to do it because the caddies, they're scraping by. They're not making any money.
And I remember you telling me that these caddies would pile in station wagons, 6, 7 to it, because they didn't have that much money back in the day that you were started out, and I would and going from one place to another because you could not hire your own caddies in your day. You had to, and so they got paid. I'm sure they reported all their income on their income tax and everything.
The caddies, they either didn't file, or they filed it in there. And but that's kind of a hazy area. Now I think the bigger names, like say the guys that are making all the big money now, I'm sure they're 1099ing and they're paying their caddies a lot more, and they're giving them 1099s. I
will guarantee you that the authorities are monitoring everything, especially since you know and I know now that when you play in a tour and you win money in certain states because of the different tournaments, they have to pay state taxes, and so it becomes really convoluted. So the today player cannot do their own tax work, quite frankly. They just cannot do it.
No, it was too complicated way back then, but then as years went by, the states started realizing, hey, they're letting this money slip away.
Right.
So they started nailing every state we played in.
Right.
That we would get a little deduction off of our check. You know, if it was a big check, it was, they could be taking a couple thousand or something. And then it was all paid through the PGA Tour. Then everything goes into our direct deposit. But we get a form at the end that showed that we paid.
Let me interrupt you right now because we got to go for a commercial break. But I'll tell you something that you said on what they call sua sponte when we were doing the radio show is that back in 1962 the IRS audited you.
Right.
And I'm going to tell the folks what was the audit about, how ridiculous it was, and the results. So when we come back, we're going to talk about the man, the myth, the legend, and the IRS audit in 1962. So stay with us.
That's right.
Hi folks, I'm Bernie Gartland, and I'm so proud to introduce you to the Gartland Group. Do you have a need to have your current or prior year tax returns prepared? Is the IRS knocking at your door and you need legal representation? Do you need professional bookkeeping services? The Gartland Group can help. Let us put control back in your life and have that control give you a future.
Call today for a free consultation. 760-345-1500.
Hey everybody, Bernie Garland, welcome back. We're here with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Al Geiberger, and joining us from American Tax Centers is Brian Bauer. And we're going to tell you why he's joining us in a minute. But we left the first segment and we're talking about in the early 60s, a young Al Geiberger was audited by the IRS, which was absolutely a ridiculous audit. In fact, you had a former IRS agent help you with that.
What is it, a group chief? Is that
yeah, something like that, yeah.
Okay, I played in the early 60s.
Right.
60, 61, right in there. And they came back and audited me, saying, and they claimed that the road was my home because I didn't own a residence.
Right, in California.
Yeah, in California. The road was my home. And
Sounds like a Bob Dylan song.
I was still living at my parents' house.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
They were claiming the road was my home and that none of my expenses were deductible, anything.
Therefore,
you didn't
all
have
of that
home
would
base.
that would have been taxable income.
Right.
Right.
And here I had a group chief as my, and he was just laughing the whole time.
Yeah.
And of course, he went down and they went through a whole thing explaining it to him, played by their rules. He knew what to do.
Yeah.
But that because I was living at my parents' house and playing the tour, there's no need to own anything. They finally gave in because I was a registered voter. I think that was the fine. That I was close to be living as I could, and they finally. But they tried to say, no, I couldn't take any deductions because the road was my home.
And you know, it's interesting because I remember you telling me this when you were a guest on the radio show, is that you said every golf professional was monitoring this audit because they were having the same problem.
They were. I couldn't believe it. I was kind of embarrassed about it, but then pretty soon it started traveling around, and it got to be quite a subject for a while.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's interesting. And you know, I mean, when people are high profile or whatever, just recently this singer, I just heard on the television today, this singer from New Jersey is being indicted on tax evasion. They target high profile people. Now, by the way, you played in the era of Billy Casper, of Gary Player,
Nicholas Palmer. I pretty well hit them all.
Right. and I think that you had during that time
Byron
period,
Nelson, no. Right. And Ben Hogan. I played in a few tournaments that Ben Hogan played in, but he was really
Did you read the match yet?
No.
That's the Ben Hogan, Byron Nelson, Venturi, and the other amateur.
Yeah, Harvey Ward.
But Harvey Ward. And the clam bake, the Bing Crosby clam bake.
They turned a round of golf of those four getting together into a whole book.
That's right. It's on Cypress Point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they, as they're giving shot by shot by shot, they're also telling you about their upbringing and where they came from and how they did certain things and everything.
You got to remember, it was Byron Nelson, who was a legend, and Ben Hogan.
Right.
They were going to play a practice round, and somehow, because I did read part of it, Ken Venturi and Harvey Ward were buddies, and there were these two hotshot amateurs, and somehow they got them to play a foursome, and it turned into what became the match, and they all shot phenomenal rounds.
Do you know what this expression means? There was a lot of money involved. Okay, yeah, the two guys, the car dealer guy who had Venturi working for him, bet some. They never have told anybody how much they bet, but it was
a large number.
A large number.
Well, you think about it, Byron Nelson and Ben Hogan.
Yeah.
Okay, go against those two.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I could see where there was a lot of interest.
Close. and I think it was lost on the last hole. I wouldn't even tell you who it is. Now, let me ask you a question. You had 12 PGA wins?
11. Yeah.
11. And you were in 2 Ryder Cups?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And the interesting thing is that you had all of this at the same time that you were playing against Nicholas Palmer, Billy Casper, who, when I read the book, The Big Three and Me under Billy Casper, it's amazing how good this guy was.
Wasn't he? I've got the book, and he signed a personal copy to me. And I started reading about it, and he's such a great person. Right. And you just start reading, don't you? And you just kind of go, and he doesn't do it in a bragging sort of way or anything.
Right. Matter of fact.
Yeah.
And he was very complimentary of Johnny Miller when he was coming up. By the way, I have played that course down there in Chula Vista because that's where I come from, that area.
Oh, yeah.
Now, let me ask you this question. Brian, you're sitting here. Al, you're sitting here.
Right.
How did you two guys, you as the CFO of American Tax Centers and me with Gartland Law, how did Al Geiberger meet us?
Do you want me to answer that?
Sure.
I'll let you answer that, Al.
I always kept very good books. I was so tedious all those years on the tour, going way back to 1960, all the way through. And I got to where I was moving around, and I kind of lost contact with my accountant. I mean, he retired. One retired, the one that was the Group 2. He retired, sold it to somebody else, then he sold somebody else. Then that one moved to San Luis Obispo, and then I ended up moving to Seattle. And pretty soon it got a little hard to get together, and I got to a time in my life where I all of a sudden let it slip by. So I didn't pay 1 year, and then I was embarrassed I didn't pay 1 year. I didn't pay the next year, and so eventually it brought me through these doors in here with my tail between my legs. But I was embarrassed the fact that I hadn't paid. I had just lost contact with my accountant and everything else, and one thing just led to another, and so thank gosh, I heard about you and came in and met Brian here, and getting me all straightened out.
We got you all straightened out. And the interesting thing is that when you use the term that you did not pay, you didn't file.
Yeah.
And so what happens is the IRS then did substitute returns on you. And I'm disclosing
and they're not very
this.
nice about it, are they?
No, and I'm disclosing this because we have your permission to disclose this, because Al, when I talked to him, he says, I would like to say some things about this because he realizes that he's the poster child for everything that you and I, Brian, have been saying about people don't do this, okay? And you know what it is, and I was talking to Brian, and I said, the problem is everybody who's not as famous as you, that's the ordinary worker going about their job, they think they're the only ones that have this problem, that nobody else could have this problem.
Right, and there's like 31 million other people that have the same problem in the country right now.
And they don't understand certain things, that it gets compounded. So, first of all, we're very grateful that Al chose us, and we're very fortunate that we worked things out for him. But it didn't have to be. Right. And I'm going to explain that. We're going to take a commercial break now, but
you mentioned that one time that people are embarrassed once they miss. They keep missing.
That's right. We have an expression: 1 begets 2, begets 4, begets 10.
That's me.
Yeah. So when we come back, we're going to talk about how we remedy this, and what the reason was is that the information that IRS had that he owed taxes is not accurate.
Right.
And it never was accurate.
And then when you don't file a return, the IRS estimates, and they always estimate on the high end.
And they don't give you the deductions for let's say, the capital gains and the Section 121, which is on the sale of homes and everything. Right. We're going to get back to this. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, Brian Bauer from American Tax Centers is here, who by the way, you have a nice portrait in a...
Right. Well, let Al mention there's an important date coming up from, he's Mr. 59.
Hold that till we go to the commercial. We'll come right back. We'll talk about that, and we'll show a picture of what we have hanging on our wall here. So hang loose, everybody. We'll be right back. Are you suffering through sleepless nights because you haven't filed tax returns in several years? Hi, I'm Bernie Gartland for the Gartland Group. There is a solution. Let us bring your tax returns current and show you how you can pay the IRS on your terms, not theirs, and in some cases, without interest and penalties. For this or any other tax problem, the Gartland Group can help. Let us put control back in your life and have that control give you a future. No more sleepless nights. Hi, everybody. Bernie Gartland. The name of the program is Taxes, the IRS, and You. Welcome back. We have Al Geiberger, Mr. 59, the first person to hit that 59. And I don't remember, was it Colonial?
Colonial Country Club in Memphis, Tennessee, not Fort Worth. Yeah.
All right. And we're going to talk to him about what he brought up the idea that he's a self-acclaimed poster child for what Brian and I say you shouldn't do. You should get your taxes done. And we'll go on that in a minute. But this is a very important year. Brian, tell Al, why is this an important year?
Well, it's the 35th anniversary of Al shooting 59.
And it's still the record. That's 35 years. Nobody has broken the records.
Yeah.
I have brothers and sisters now, but it's still a record. Nobody has gone below 59.
Annika did at 59, right?
Yeah, right.
But
And
not
that's
below
the
it.
sister part.
Yeah.
And then 4 others. And it's been kind of good. I didn't know at the time. When we had one other tied it, it didn't make too much difference and somebody tied it. But when more and more have tied it, the media come to me and then they want to talk about it and they go over the whole thing. And now they have rounds to compare it. What was par on the course? How long was the course? The equipment and everything like that. And I don't want to be bragging, but I win every argument because I had the longest golf course, the oldest equipment, the oldest conditions. And I had the course was almost 7,300 yards back in 1977 with the old wound ball and old,
old everything,
woods.
And you were gracious.
Except me.
And you were gracious enough to give me a nice 8x10, and it has your scorecard and the ball and. We have that here.
Right.
Yeah, we have. As a matter of fact, you have it encased in a beautiful.
Well, I gave him the ball and the card, and I didn't know. Most people don't do too much with it, but all of a sudden he had the ingenuity. He showed me. He ordered this plaque. I don't know how you ever found it. Yeah. And it has the card and the ball and everything all set in there. It's like they made the plaque for you.
They made it for you, Al.
And getting back for just a little bit on Al's situation is that when he came to us because the IRS was doing substitute returns under 6020B, but they weren't giving him his exemption for principal residence. And because he was on the tour, he moved to here, bought a house, moved to here, bought a house, moved to here. And all they saw was close of escrows, and all of a sudden they were saying, you owe all this money. Well, he didn't. Then the problem is, you sit there and say, where are all the books and records for all these sales and everything else like that? Because this was many, 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 many years ago.
Right.
And what Al just said is that the guy died, okay,
two retired,
right, and retired, and all of a sudden the books and records are lost.
Who knows where they are?
So what we had to do, and we had to reconstruct for California, if I remember correctly.
Right, we did.
And what we had to do is we had to do for Al what we could do with what information we had available, and it turned out well. And what a lot of times I laugh with Al, and sometimes I laugh at him and I tell this to people when I'm out and about. And I say, we do all the present tax work for Al Geiberger, and I said he is so difficult when I get him in here to talk about taxes. And they say, well, why is he difficult? Is he offensive? No. I say, Al, let me have your 1099, Bernie. I got to tell you about stack and tell. Stack and tell. No, Al, I need to get your deductions. But you don't understand something. I'm going to create a contract with such and such and such to give golf lessons. I said, Al, I need to talk about the taxes.
I'm going to turn that around. I come in here and Bernie's such a let's call him a golf nut. He's such enthusiastic about it that we talk. On a 30-minute session, we talk 20 minutes or 25 minutes golf and 5 minutes business, and boom, boom, I'm out the door. And so it's both our faults.
Well, the funniest thing is that after we shoot this segment, ladies and gentlemen, Al told me last night about a new type of putting grip on your club.
We don't have time to explain it.
But the point is that. What a great relationship. I am so glad that you came in and met us through Gartland Law and through Brian. And Brian was a tax auditor for the state of California for 20 years. Al, I wouldn't have anybody that is better suited to take over American Tax Centers, which I'm also a part of, with Gartland Law. And we've developed now something called Griffin.
And he's easy to work with.
He's easy to work with, yeah.
And I like to talk about golf, too, just like Bernie.
Yeah, he does.
But you got to work on his swing a little bit.
I can imagine.
As a matter of fact, you and my
I've had a lesson with Al.
You, my daughter, and Dave, who is a tax attorney with Gartland Law, you're playing in a tournament on Sunday, aren't you?
Yes, for the Humane Society out here in the desert for doggies.
And you're going out. You're going out at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock on a Sunday. It's only supposed to be like 104, so perfect.
I'm not going to. I won't join you. I've been into a couple of deals like that where it went to 110. They said 104. 110.
Yeah.
That's high.
You stagger in.
By the way, to segue, I think we've covered all the tax issues because Al's a happy camper. We do his tax work. He thinks we're good. Gene,
no, but there's one other thing.
Yeah.
I transferred my retirement from the tour, was in Charles Schwab. I built up some retirement.
Yeah.
And when we transferred it to
the annuity company.
annuity,
They said it was a distribution.
They said it was a whole, so it made me look like I was making a fortune. So they piled that on there. And then I transferred my Keo from one bank to another bank, you might say, and they piled that on there. So, and then Alan wasn't filing, and so the whole pile got bigger and bigger. And that's when I came staggering in the door.
Staggering in the door. And the interesting thing in the Big Three and Me with Casper, he talked about Gene Littler. He was a force to be reckoned with also.
Oh, yeah.
Back in that day.
Gene the Machine. They didn't call him that for nothing.
And I think that he was on 15 years ago or so. I don't know if he's passed on or not, but about 15 years ago, he was on the 7th hole, par 3 hole at the resort, Indian Wells Resort. And you pay $1 or whatever, or take his and I did not recognize him, and I did not know much about him until I read. And you know what? Of all the players that Billy Casper played against, his nemesis
was that guy.
Was Gene the Machine.
Gene the Machine Littler.
Gene is the most. He didn't want to be out there in all the color. He just was the little machine that went along, no color, real, very nice, low-key person. And originally, Byron Nelson, I think when I was a little kid, was I copied my swing after him, what I could see. We didn't have television. So, but Byron Nelson, they say my swing copied him. But as time got along, Gene the Machine is about 6, 7 years, 8 years ahead of me. And so I loved his swing. And so I would say Gene Littler was he's who I copied, because he had the simplest golf swing.
Casper said he patterned his after Ben Hogan.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Casper had a very simple swing. Littler had a very simple swing, not a lot of moving parts. But it's really the modern golf swing.
Al has the book, but I have the book at home, and I'll give it to you because it's absolutely amazing that I read the match, and it brought me up to date on those other guys. But on Billy Casper and Gene Littler, it's something that we didn't know about. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a delight. Our time is out. It goes so quickly.
Now you know why we get 25 minutes of golf talk and 5 minutes of business.
Al, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much, my friend, of being here. And thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the program. This is a most humble, talented man ever. So I thank him, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. 59. Thank you, everybody. That was good.